Welcome to One Click Medical Chronologies, Chronicle and Superinsight in Action. This workshop is part of Chronicle's Advancing Technology in Disability Law series, where we spotlight tools, workflows, and integrations, helping disability firms modernize how they work. Just to be clear, you will receive a full replay after today's event. So in the case where you have to miss anything or you just want to review how something works, you'll be able to do so with that recording. We will be taking questions throughout in the Zoom chat. We'll be monitoring it and feeding the questions to Nikhil and Luke during our live discussion. So if you have questions, please do just add 2 hashtags in front of it when you drop into the chat. It just makes it easier for us to follow along with that as the other chats come in. As a quick introduction from me, my name is Will, and I am from the Chronicle team. I focus on building education, partnerships, and collaborations that help disability law firms adopt better tools and stronger operational standards. Before we jump in as well, let's go over what we're going to learn in today's session. In today's session, we're going to go over how Chronicle's integration with Superinsight eliminates manual client setup and document uploads, what Superinsight's Blue Book matching and RFC extraction looks like in practice, how to use Superinsight's AI editing tools to refine your chronologies, and most importantly, and I'm sure some folks are excited about, which is how to get started if you are interested. All right, we do have a special offer as well as a summary document with key takeaways from today's workshop that we'll share more details on how you get that at the end of today's workshop. But moving along into some quick introductions, we're joined today by Nikhil, founder of Chronicle. It's the platform that's helping Social Security disability firms automate case tracking, manage ERE access, and streamline their case preparation. Nikhil has worked with attorneys and advocates across the country to simplify complex workflows in the disability space, monitoring over 175,000 cases and 7.5 million documents. We're also joined by Luke Connolly, co-founder of Superinsight. Luke is a military veteran who survived a suicide bomb attack in Iraq and later experienced firsthand how slow and disorganized medical record review can derail disability claims. And so alongside his co-founder, Nelson, he built Superinsight to bring AI-driven spend, accuracy, and privacy to medical record analysis. With that set of introductions out of the way, what we're then going to do is we're going to just dig into, first and foremost, why we built this integration. And for that, I'm going to pass it over to Nikhil.
Awesome. Well, excited to be talking with you all. I know some of you currently use Superinsight, so this will be kind of a bonus to your use case. And for your folks who don't, the reason why we partnered with Superinsight is for a lot of firms, medical chronologies are a big bottleneck. We know it's super important for the SSDI process. And so we really wanted to partner with Superinsight because they have one of the most sophisticated products on the market around medical chronologies. And our mission at Chronicle has always been to give everyone the option to use their data however they want. And so, whether it's our in-house medical chronology products or hooking into others, we thought it would be, valuable to bring them on and make it as easy as possible to, leverage their system with the documents already in Chronicle. So, given that one of our main things we want to do with this integration is eliminate clicks and manual process, right? If you use any other medical chronology provider right now, you're probably used to the process of having to download the documents, organize them, upload them back into another medical chronology provider. This really adds up time. Every time you want an update, you have to do it again. And so we wanted to eliminate that. So using our API and the integration we've built with Superinsight, all of that document data from Chronicle can easily flow into their system so that you can generate chronologies, have them updated with a click of a button, and not have to kind of do this download, upload process you're probably used to. I do want to clarify, compared to our current medical chronology product, this is something that lives in Superinsight side. So you won't be using Superinsight within Chronicle. It'll be used within their own web app, but that comes with a lot of power, and you'll hopefully see in Luke's demo that there's a lot of sophisticated AI features that are enabled through their product that lets you really dive into things like RFC and Blue Book and drafting briefs. And then last note I just want to say is you do have to be on the Chronicle Pro plan while using this integration. So just something to consider as you evaluate Superinsight. So with that, I'll hand this over to Luke to share a little bit more.
Yeah, thanks for the intro and kind of giving an idea of how the integration kind of works. We try to keep things pretty simple on the Super Insight side of things. I will share my screen here and kind of give you a look under the hood so you can see how we do things. Sorry, I have so many tiny screens. I got to figure out which one it is. All right, hopefully we're in the right place here. Okay, let me move you guys over. All right, so what you're looking at right now is the Super Insight dashboard. When you log in, you're able to see all the cases presented in front of you. There's a left menu that just kind of gives you the views based on what you're clicking on. But from the standpoint of what I'm going to show you today, just going to focus on the cases side of things, and we're going to look at how the integration works from the Chronicle to Super Insight and then how you go ahead and run your first report after you do that. So, like I said, we try to keep things pretty simple, so it's hard to get lost, but the import is kind of where we start with Chronicle. And that would be where we come in here. Chronicle is going to give you your API key in your Chronicle dashboard. Once you get that, you'll add it in here and that will allow you to connect to Chronicle. Now it's just as simple as doing a search via name, so last four of social for your client that you're wanting to pull in. Here's our test case, Paul King. We're going to go ahead and say yes. And you have already, at this point, you'll have already have created an organization within Super Insight. So you'll be able to say yes to that and you'll go ahead and pull it in. And we'll let you know you were successful in that. It's syncing the file documents at this point, and we're doing all of the processing of the information that's coming through that. Um, Now, it's also important to know that today, because we're early on in this integration, we don't have an auto resync feature as Chronicle is doing the auto syncing with ERE. We're not at this moment in time, but we're working toward that very quickly. So what we do, if you get notice from Chronicle that a case file has been updated, just come back in here and you can actually resync any of the files that are currently in there. So it would just be a manual click resync at this point, but it would allow you to go ahead and do that in the future. That will be automated. So, and there will be further automated workflows. And also just, feedback wise, we love to hear kind of from users and potential users what features they want and kind of that automated workflow process. I always call anytime you're working with AI these days, I call it the art of the possible. And so it's what things, if you could have them, would you really be reaching out there and grabbing off the shelf if you could have it right now? So love to hear any comments in the Zoom chat. If you have any thoughts on that as you go, we'd love to hear it. And you can always reach out later as well. Once you do the syncing though, you'll get the documents and the folders that were pulled in from Chronicle. And then we just go ahead and move into the reports tab. We're still under the same case. Always important to make sure you verify that when you're adding any documents or building any report. You don't want to confuse one case for the other. Um, but once you go ahead and do that, we can go ahead and kick off your first case. This would be where we can select the entire exhibited ERE, or we can go with individual files. We are set up to be able to handle the entire exhibited ERE, so you can just simply choose that, pull it in, and then we go ahead and we choose the uh, the report that we're going to go with. And this report is specifically designed for the exhibited ERE, and it's kind of like two reports in one, really. So you get the five-step review, and then you also get a robust, detailed chronology of all of Section F. So it enables you to go ahead and break that down. So you don't have to. Obviously, you're not worrying about breaking down or breaking out Section F, but given that what we already showed you, you don't have to worry about doing any separating of files. You take it to the next step, gives you just a summary of what you're about to do before you hit build. Our system is a credit-based system. I can explain that in more detail here in a minute. But you would go ahead and hit build on that. It would all of a sudden show up and say in progress. And then we would you just kind of step away. You can go you can run this the night before you want to review it the next day, or you can run it in the morning if you plan on having a need to look at it later in the day. But it's going to take anywhere, depending on the load in the system, it could take anywhere from 30 minutes to a couple hours, typically on average. I do have one already ready to go for you, so you don't have to wait that long in this demo. And it just simply kind of in similar fashion to the main dashboard, the sections of the report are going to view on the left. The information, the content of the report is going to be in the middle. And as you can see, it's going to have the citations and page numbers with the kind of SOAP formatted chronology. And on the right, you're going to see what we call report insight. It's kind of our AI on top of the report. And it allows you to ask questions, extract information, do an analysis, do those follow-on tasks, and to include get asked for the AI to essentially write you a brief as well. And I'll show you what that looks like. Also important to know that anytime you're going through this and you're like, where's this information coming from? You can actually click on any of these citations and you can pull that information up and you can review it in parallel with the actual report. So you can verify the source of the information and the actual output. When you do any of the following tasks, what we always tell people is, you're going to get, like, especially with a chronology, it could be very, very voluminous, even in the sense of what you get on the output. But the way we design this, because everybody has a different way of doing it, is we're going to give you everything, and then you can use the AI to eliminate what you don't want. So you can quickly pare down the things that are important to you. For example, if I wanted to come in here and redo the medical chronology, for example, we're going to say redo, and I can actually point to the context of the AI at a section of the report or an actual file. Say I uploaded maybe a template or something like that I want to use to help me write the brief based on how I write the brief. You can do that as well. That's more kind of advanced use, but it's actually a great way to use it. And I'm going to say, and only include the HIP related records. And I'll just keep it simple, but I'll go ahead and hit go on that. And you can see before I jumped in here, I even asked it just a general question or a specific question about the entire record. But I said, did they do any work on the side? Because, that's would be good to know if they did, right? So the output, it gave me an output. It gave me kind of an analysis of what's going on with that. And it kind of put it in the a bit of the 5-step language. And I'll go ahead and I can add that, whatever the output is, I can actually add that to a new section of the report. So I'll just call this so I go ahead and add that. Now I have it in the middle. I have the section over here. And I can go ahead and download this with the report, or I can download this with the individual section. I can export it as a PDF or Word doc. So there's a lot of ways you can use this, and here's the Looks like we're done with, oh, we're still processing. So our model, we have a more advanced model that we're now using on for an agent on the report insight. So for something like a big lift, like actually redoing the medical chronology, it will take like 4 to 5 minutes to re-scramble everything, but you can do it dynamically on the fly as you can see. So when it's done, I'll show you what that looks like. It will be the chronology pared down into just those issues. But let's go ahead and take a look at what else is in the sections of the report. We have a section curated for this specific report. It's curated for all the diagnostic studies, so you can have that just in one place for quick access. When we look at red flags consist of essentially contradictions from between ADLs, functional capacity reports, missing records. They can be, involve substance abuse, basically any gotcha type stuff that might be in the file that just allows you to quickly go through that. And you can even change the way it outputs into more of a list format. We have some people that are like, I don't want to read paragraphs. I want one page. So yeah, you can do all of that. When we look at the 5-step report, like I mentioned earlier, it's where we kind of have the second version of the report. Like I said, it's two reports in one. So now you're entering into more of the analysis and review of the information through that 5-step lens. So we have the SGAs curated, and all this is based on synthetic data, by the way. So sometimes it reads kind of funny, but it's there to kind of be a placeholder for you. So none of this is anybody's actual records, just so we all have that on the record. And then we have step two, which is focused on obviously severe impairments and allows you to get a good look at those outside of just the medical chronology. Step three, obviously, it's like one of the favorites, but it's definitely there to help you quickly kind of get a grasp of how do the severe impairments line up against the listings. Um, this is in the process of going through updates as well, because it's constantly needing to go through that process. Um, and then, but it gives you a good analysis of where it fits. If it does meet a listing, it'll let you know. If it doesn't, it'll let you know. But it'll also provide kind of an analysis, a gap analysis, if you were. Past relevant work, step four. So you have that in there. This is also being updated to just include that past 5-year window outlook. And then the step five, which focuses more on the RFCs. So it'll pull in any of the RFC related content, doctors mentioned, exams that they went to that where they focused on their limitations and functional capacity and whatnot. So, and then I did something like, hey, did they play golf? And did a search of that. So it's just like practical things that not just getting a templated report out of the box, but it allows you to change the templated report if you need to, kind of adjust it to the way you like it, as well as ask follow-on questions, get follow-on analysis, and even include further CFRs and other guidelines that you can upload yourself and cross-analyze against the report as well. So all of that is a lot to take in for one, 15-minute little demo, but I'll just leave you with, obviously the brief is one of those things as well. So it gives you the ability to kind of knock out a first draft. And I didn't have a template to use for it, so it gave me, the all the objective information, kind of based the uh, the the information from the brief on the information from the report. So if you have a template that you like to use, then we can definitely teach you how to use your template as kind of the style guide to create your briefs using the this process as well. So Any questions over any of that? That was kind of a
Yeah,
loaded truck I just dumped in your lap. So,
yeah, I think it'd be great to dig into a couple of the specific questions platform wise, which I'm seeing in the chat right now. And Luke, before we do that, do you mind just zooming in maybe one or two more times on
oh
your screen if it's
yes,
easier for folks?
yes.
So one question that Sherry had is if you could show us a one page, please. Like, um, if that makes sense to you. Otherwise, Sherry, feel free to add a elaboration to what you might be looking for there.
Show a one page. Yes, please elaborate.
Okay, and then while we're waiting for her response there, Stephanie had a question around seeing a section for medical source statements. Um,
Oh
do you mind?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So you can definitely, we can definitely pull that in. That is coming in the other updates as well, having it templated into the report. But right now, the way people do it is they'll just say, something like that, and go ahead and hit go. And if there are any medical source statements, it will pull them all up for you. I don't think there are any of this one because it's a synthetic file. So it'll probably do its nitty-gritty search and then come back and say negative on that. But that's essentially how you can. If I would always try to help people understand what we've created is really essentially a way to extract just about anything from the records and do it very well in an accurate standpoint. So if you can think of what you want to look for in the same way that you would go through that process subconsciously when you're going through a file, now it's just getting used to putting going through those reps of like asking AI to assist you in that same process as if it was kind of an assistant alongside you that understood what you were doing. So
Got it.
that's
So
yeah, go ahead.
got it. So for Stephanie's question in terms of seeing a section for medical source statements, just so that it's easy for the transcription as well, it was as simple as Luke going in and typing, "Give me a list of medical source statements in the record," and that's like the explicit example of what you would prompt in that situation from Super Insight.
Yeah, it's really not the more specific you want to be, the you're always going to get a more specific answer. So if you're very broad, it knows what medical source statements are. And those are usually labeled even as medical source statement. So typically it's not difficult to locate something that's labeled that. But even the nuances, it will help you kind of pick up on a lot of the nuances based on context. So the more specific your context, the better your answers are always going to be.
Got it. And Sherry clarified, I think what she was asking about is you had mentioned something about being able to see these things on one page as opposed to potentially the paragraphs. I'm assuming that refers to the paragraphs in the side on the sidebar in the chat. Is there like a more streamlined view of these reports if you were to, I don't know,
Oh,
do some
like
of
if we
the,
exported them?
yeah, I think that's
Yeah,
where how
okay.
I'm
Yeah,
thinking.
I mean, I want to show you an export anyway, so that's a good question to ask. So here would be an example of like how you could look at, we have all of the, what we do is we'll put all of the sections in basically bookmark form, even the ones that you added to the report. So you can have all of that. We also attach in this case, the fake synthetic ERE. But so you'll get the whole exhibited file attached with it. This always kind of freaks people out at first when they'll be like, "Oh my gosh, why is this report 8,000 pages?" It's not. The chronology in this case is what, only 19 pages. So, the reality is you're not going to be getting an 8,000 page report. You'll get an extensive report, but it's not going to be as big as the actual source file. So,
Got it.
yeah. And
Another
this allows
question.
you to go back and forth too, so you can go between the records and whatnot and back
Great.
and forth. Yeah.
Another question from Allison is once we run a 5 step, and then there's new evidence that potentially comes in. How many times are folks able to rerun the report? And yeah, is there a certain time frame of how long the report can be maintained on Superinsight?
That's a great question. So, Superinsight will give you the ability, once you go in and do that resync with Chronicle, and the new records are in there, you can actually come over here to rebuild report within the reports tab of the case, and it will allow you to add those additional records that have been added or replace the existing, in this case, I could say replace the existing ERE that was uploaded previously with the updated one. So that would essentially swap out the two, and then I could hit done. And I can do that an additional 3 times after the initial run of the report. So you're only paying for the initial run, 2 credits in this case, and then 3 additional times. It doesn't cost me anything extra. So that helps keep cost under control for that.
Awesome. I see there's a couple other questions later in terms of for Nikhil, in terms of like how this works in the context of Chronicle's offerings of medical chronology native. I'll save that for when Nikhil goes over the API key setup and whatnot. And then I
Sure.
also see a question just in general about trialing and whatnot for Superinsight. We'll go over that when we go over the slides in the context of just the special offer for folks today. But Luke, is there anything else you wanted to go over for folks in terms of this demo portion?
I mean, we have obviously, there's a lot of people that have we get this question a lot too from like people who are not just doing Social Security, but they're maybe doing workers' comp as well, or VA as well, or any other type of practice. The credits that you purchase within Superinsight, they're good for any type of report you run. So it's universal credits, and they can kind of move through. If you are working on a VA case, then you can use them as well for a VA case when you build that report. So yeah.
Excellent.
Anything else we can definitely cover and happy to do in a demo call or anything like that. So
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we'll cover a couple more of the questions in just a little bit, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take over on screen share, and then Nikhil
yep.
will share a little bit more in terms of the ways that we get set up on the Chronicle side, in case you are looking and wondering how does this all work within your Chronicle accounts. So Nikhil, do you want to go over just at a high level the Chronicle API key as well as some of the details and setup here?
Yeah, for sure. So as I kind of mentioned before, right, the key thing is you do need to be on the Pro plan in order to get access to the API keys. It's super simple. Right now we actually have an apps page that shows you all the possible integrations, and many of them will say you just need to get an API key. Um, and so just so folks know, I know an API key probably sounds like a lot of jargon. It's essentially just a set of keys you can give to anyone so they get access to the data in Chronicle. So it's like giving someone a spare key to your house. I know that sounds a little bit scary, but that's the point. It is something you have to be careful with since it does give someone access to the data within your Chronicle instance. And so that is, something to think about when you think about security. But super simple. You just go into the Chronicle settings page. So in that bottom right-hand corner, I'll be showing you guys. You navigate to the API section. You just say create a new key. You'll enter the name Superinsight, and it will show you that key. Just want to flag, you can only see the key once, so make sure you copy it then, and then you, as Luke showed you, plug it into Superinsight.
Yeah, and why don't we do an actual just run through of that, Nikhil? I know it's simple, but just so that folks see it a second time beyond just the screenshot view.
Yeah. Let me share my screen. You guys able to see it?
Yep.
Cool. All right. And just, quick plug for folks who haven't seen Chronicle before. This is the Chronicle dashboard that is fed off of live ERE data. So, whatever's happening in the ERE is reflected in Chronicle, everything from your decisions to recent status changes to any new documents. And kind of to Luke's point of things updating, whenever new medical records do show up in the ERE, they get reflected in Chronicle the day they get uploaded. And that way you're able to update your medical chronologies in real time as new things come in. But to focus on how the actual setup goes, it's super easy. You go into settings, you'll be able to see here there's an API section. Once again, you must be on the Pro plan to see it. On the API, you'll be able to say create API key, as easy as entering Super Insight. Hit create. That will now show me this API key. Remember, it only shows once, so you must copy it and store it somewhere safe. And once again, think about it as a key to your house. You don't want to just paste it anywhere. You want to make sure that it is kept secure. And with that API key, you would then paste it into the Super Insight section on their product, and that will let them now pull data out of Chronicle. And you can always delete the key if you want to revoke access for any reason. That's
Excellent.
it.
With that, I'm going to turn it back to some slides. We're going to recap what Super Insight does with your records, and then we'll have a quick question for folks to engage with in the chat before we then share some details from the Super Insight team in terms of some offers and info about who Super Insight is for, and that'll be a good time to answer some of the other questions that came in earlier. So just to recap, what does Super Insight do with your records? Does Blue Book matching, which identifies the relevant SSA disability listings automatically, RFC extraction as well in terms of pulling functional limitations from medical records, as we saw Luke in that prompt earlier, complete AI editing tools, which allows you to refine and adjust the output to match your needs. And they also take things with an approach of privacy first processing. So AI only processing, there are no human reviewers. With that, it'd be great to hear from you in the chat. Which of these features would potentially save you the most time? A, Blue Book matching, B, RFC extraction, C, AI editing tools, or D, automatic sync with Chronicle. And while folks are typing that in, we will start to go over what who Super Insight is for, and also the free resource and giveaway. So again, as you look at these options, it's A, Blue Book matching, B, RFC extraction, C, AI editing tools, and D, automatic sync from Chronicle. It looks like the early responses are leading with RFC extraction. And while folks are still typing that in, Luke, do you want to, or Nikhil, do you want to go over who Super Insight is built for? I think both of you can probably tag team this part since it's been spoken to some extent. And then I think the Super Insight team can also share a little bit more in terms of just how the credits work and schemes like that were shared earlier.
Cool. I'll kick it off. So as I kind of mentioned, if you're a Pro Plan user of Chronicle, this would definitely be a good fit for you. And then, as I mentioned at the beginning, medical chronologies, everyone has their own opinion and desire of what they want out of their medical chronologies or briefs. And so as Chronicle, we see any provider as a good fit to work with Chronicle, whether it is our inbuilt powered by Node Detect or external with Super Insight. So, it really depends what you want from your medical chronology provider. And so if you're looking to explore something on the more robust side, it has more AI enablement around asking questions, as you saw in the demo, Super Insight could be a really good fit for you. Just note, it does not exist within the Chronicle interface. It exists in its own website. So if you are someone who wants everything in one place, maybe not as good of as a fit, but obviously there are trade-offs there. And that's why we offer our integration with Super Insight.
Yeah, I'll just follow it up with saying that obviously we wouldn't be on this call if we weren't excited about partnering with Chronicle, and I think in terms of solving the issue of dealing with ERE, you guys do that exceptionally well. So hats off to you as always. And we're really a setup that is used for any practitioner who needs to understand and get insight on the medical records for, specifically for disability, claims space. And, but we do a lot in the medical legal in terms of extraction of medical information out of files. So we're HIPAA compliant. We carry ISO 42001 compliance as well, which is an AI trust, basically responsible AI management rating. And we're also in the process of completing SOC 2 Type 2 with that as well. So with Super Insight, it's if you need help breaking down medical records, getting analysis, and understanding what's going on with your claim for whatever the practice that you're in, then we're definitely we'd love to help you do that, and we're willing to demo it for you personally, as well as give you a free case review when you try it for yourself. So.
Fun. So with that, it's a monthly credit subscription, 2 credits on typical for a standard report, 3 to 4 for advanced reports, and no per case or file size fees. Chronicle Pro users can use this today. If you're interested in Super Insight, we'll share some details in the Zoom chat in just a little bit in terms of how you can get in touch with the Super Insight team. With that, we have some free resources and a special offer for attendees for today. There is an integration guide, which is live on our blog, teaching you everything that we went over today with screenshots, as well as just the workflows of how it looks on the Super Insight side, as well as from the Chronicle API key setup. If you need to review that, it will be included as well once you submit feedback for today's workshop. And then there's a webinar exclusive offer too from the Super Insight team. You can save $100 off your first month if you use this code, save 100 first. As a reminder, you will receive the replay, this offer, and all links in your inbox after this event. So don't stress about having to, keep track of all of this. And then now we're going to shift gears into Q&A. So I've got a couple questions that came in earlier that weren't tackled. And so let's tackle those. The first question that came up is, can I confirm? I request from Chronicle, but I view and edit in Super Insight. Nikhil, go over that workflow again in terms of how this Super Insight integration works in terms of the data flow.
Yeah, for sure. So the key thing to remember about the data flow from Chronicle is you will never see Super Insight within Chronicle. You see Super Insight within their own website. So all you need to do is create this API key and hand it over to them, and they'll go in and grab what they need to do all of the review and report generation on their side.
Excellent. And what exactly gets sent to Super Insight?
Yeah, so the main thing we send is the all and the exhibit packets, kind of what Luke was showing. So just like you guys are currently downloading out of Chronicle those PDF packets that are merged, that is what Super Insight is accessing over our API. I don't know, Luke, if there's anything else that you guys look at.
No, it's really just that exhibit package is kind of the complete what we need A through F, right? So
All right. And this was mentioned earlier in the chat, but just in case some folks joined late, how long does a medical chronology take once they hit send?
once you submit a medical chronology, it can take as little as 30 minutes, can take a couple hours, depending on the size of the file, typically, on average.
And in general, how do people know when it's ready? What do they get from Super Insight?
They'll get notified via email when the report is completed. And we're adding a notification to the dashboard too, in case they're happen to be on Super Insight and they want to know while they're on there. Obviously, they don't want to just wait on an email.
Awesome. I know that privacy is a big concern. You mentioned them briefly, some of the certifications that Super Insight's been through. Who sees the medical records?
So it's locked into your walled garden. Each user has their own essentially secure military encrypted uh, walled garden for your records, and anything that you do is within that. We only have one person on our team that could potentially access anything, and they're there to support you in case something goes awry and you need to know something or you need to show them something, and that's by permission only. So, per HIPAA compliance, that's totally acceptable. But yeah, you don't have to worry about anybody seeing your client files. There's no AI being trained by your client's files or records, and we're not sending it off via API to another distant land where AI is processing it and then seeing all the records and then returning it back to us. Everything is done securely within that infrastructure.
Ryan asked, what determines the pricing on the standard report? It says 2 credits, but then $50 to $160. What determines the actual dollar amount there?
Yeah, so the dollar amount is based on credits, and essentially they can be as high as $80 per credit for one-off credits, and they get much lower as you enter into a subscription month to month or an annual. And there's lots of options for the number of cases that are needed to be processed each month or annually for that. So they get cheaper as you kind of have higher numbers and higher needs to process. Um, but the overall answer, like the short answer, is compute. AI is not cheap, and the processing of all that information is and churning through it and rerunning those reports and rebuilding them. That's transparently, that's where majority of the cost is for what we do. And so we run a kind of a credit-based economy on our end.
There was some mention in terms of AI editing tools. Curious, is it possible to edit the chronology after it's generated? And if so, what is that editing, look or feel like on the Super Insight side?
If you mean like kind of like HTML or like Word doc type editing, so there's a couple different ways to do that. Yes, there is a an edit function. So before you export it, you are able to edit like text in the actual chronology if you wanted to change something. There's also the AI editing function. So you can literally tell the I don't just want to, pare down this chronology to only include ortho related issues or mental health related issues or cardiac related issues, but I want it in a different format. Maybe I want it in a table with 4 columns and this column to have this and this column to have that and this column to have that. Or maybe I want it to keep it in markdown format. AI loves markdown format. It's super easy for AI, so it's always faster in markdown. But maybe you want it in that format, but you want it rearranged. So you don't want it, provider or date. I don't know. You might have there's some people want it reverse chronological order. So we try to be the Burger King of medical chronologies. You have it your way. That's how we roll.
Awesome. And how accurate is the Blue Book matching?
So that is always the point of contention because of needing to update constantly. So what I always tell people and how I workshop it with people is it's always better because we could be 1 day behind the update, right? And that could be mean that it's not going to be accurate. So because of that, I always tell people when you really want to rely on that, and this is what people do because it's the way to be the pointiest tip of the spear when you're processing it, is always upload your most recent listing that you're interested in cross analyzing against, and you can actually do a quick cross reference. It only takes a few minutes using the AI. You can essentially point to a file, then point to the report, and you could say, hey, is everything in this listing accurate compared to the CFR here? So that provides a quick answer, lets you know that you're as pointy as possible when you're using that, and you don't have to worry about accuracy when that it's been updated yesterday and you're using it. So that's what I always say. That's an insurance policy. So in terms of it.
Excellent. With that, thank you so much for joining, everybody. This was part of our Advancing Technology and Disability Law series. Today, we focused on this new integration with Super Insight, automatic client and document sync to then get Super Insight's sophisticated chronologies without manual setup. The key takeaway from today, Chronicle handles the admin, Super Insight handles the analysis, and now you have one click to connect them. As a reminder, you'll get a full replay of this after today's event and a full summary as well if you submit the feedback form so that you can review this on your own time. For Chronicle Pro users, you can try this right now. Go to Chronicle settings, create your API key, and then from there, enter it in Super Insight, and you're all done. And then for those of you that are new to Super Insight, Luke's team is happy to connect with you on capabilities. Feel free to check out the links in the chat. With that, we are at the top of our time. Big thanks to Nikhil and Luke for leading this and for all of your questions. As a heads up, we'll be live in 2 more weeks again with the Benny folks. So if you are interested in terms of streamlining your function report process, we're excited to bring the Benny team over there, and you can check that out on our calendar. Other than that, thanks so much, everybody, and I hope you all have a great rest of your Thursdays. Bye now.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.